Greetings, Earthlings. You are listening to Horror Nerds at Church, a ridiculously queer podcast where we take a deep dive into a horror film or space film and talk about how it connects to queerness, religion, and theology. My name is Pace Warfield, and I am the copious amounts of just staring possessively at Padme that Anakin does in this movie.
And I'm Pastor Emily, and I am watching Liberty die with thunderous applause.
And I am staring at you watching Liberty die possessively.
Yeah. So anyway, hey, how you doing?
Hello.
Follow us on Patreon at patreon.com/horrornerdsatchurch. Starting at only $5 to sign up. It is way cheaper than the death of all of our liberties. And especially this month, you are going to get our Predator movie commentary, our BooTube on Ahsoka, which for the first time we have not recorded as of recording this episode.
Yeah.
And I'm going on vacation, so it'll be fun. But we'll get it to you this month. And there's a car driving by outside with music on. And of all of the months to become a horror buff, this is the month, because this month we are dropping what is quite possibly the best Star Wars movie ever. That's right, Rogue One, on our horror buff tier.
I cannot wait.
You want to check it out.
Yeah, I cannot wait till our retrospective so we can see how our alignments on this movie are.
It.
Because I like Rogue One. I wouldn't call it the best, but I know you have a very special place in your heart for it.
Yeah, though. I was like, I feel like I'm nostalgizing. Like, I don't even know what I rated it. I just know that it's amazing and I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let us see. How have you been? You're about to go on vacation. That's cool.
I am. I mean, it's a somewhat complicated, somewhat worky vacation, but it is important trips and travels for important people in my life. So,
and surprising somebody, which I'm excited about how that goes.
I'm so excited. She is I'm so excited. The about to be surprised person has been very insistent about birthday bowling with Mama and Dad, and so we're not actually sure if I'm gonna be invited to that, because she doesn't, because as of now I'm not an option, but if so it'll be fun. I might actually, like, the one thing I might actually not be doing is hanging out on the birthday itself. But I'm staying with them all, so we'll get lots of fun time. And we're going to the Science Center of Iowa because I have a fun dual membership-y passport-y thing.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's like, this is perfect. I'll give you a free birthday present. Never mind that it costs, a fair amount of money to, like, travel to Iowa, but that's okay. Also, I get to preach. As of now, I will have preached on, as of the recording, I will have preached on Trans Day of Visibility and Easter on the same day in a congregation that wants me to preach on that.
Love it.
I'm super excited.
A congregation with whom you have worked before, right? It's that one? That's what I thought. That's cool. Yeah. So they already know you. So in a sense, it's kind of like a homecoming.
Yeah, it is. I'm really excited to be able to hang out with them again and do this whole resurrection thing together.
I'm only a little bit salty that you're going to be like, what, 100 miles from me and not visit, but it's
I
okay.
was trying so hard to figure out how to make a Minnesota visit work because my favorite now 4-year-old is in Minnesota, but the timing for when I had to make the Utah part of the flight just didn't work.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
yeah, I was like, ugh. But that just means that I have to come out some other time. And now
Yeah.
that my car is like $3,000 more fixed, I can do that.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that's not more than an entire rent for the month or
Yeah,
paycheck that I'm not
that's not
having.
enough money to become a horror buff supporter for 30 months. Not 30 months, 30,
Way more than
way more than that. 300
months.
months. 300
Yeah,
months.
yeah. It is way cheaper than fixing my car. Don't buy a Ford. Anyway, how are you doing, Face?
I'm okay. My vacation isn't really a vacation, but it is a dissertation, I guess, which will be the week after Easter. So I will be
nice.
hopefully getting some major progress done on the second half.
Which you've already started getting major progress done.
Not on the second half. I'm still on the third. So my goal is to finish chapter 3 before Holy Week, which is starts Sunday, so probably not going to happen. But here, how about this? By the end of Holy Week, my goal is to have finished chapter 3, which means for the week after, when I'm off for the entire week, I can start chapters 4, 5, and 6, and I have a sense, because that's the part I'll be engaging directly with Luther. I have a sense that I will be able to work on those pretty quickly, but we will see.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You'll see. Chapter 3 is really fun, though. Chapter 3 is a chapter I was dreading. So if any of you want to do PhD studies, first of all, don't, because academia is a dumpster fire and it needs major reforms. But if you were to do PhD studies for your own edification or whatever, or you just happen to have lots of money and can throw it at things like this,
throw it away.
Yeah, it's a piece of advice is like, when you get to the dissertation stage, actually just like write it instead of like feeling scared and nervous and anxious and imposter syndrome about it, because that's what I was doing for the past 3 years, is feeling scared and nervous and anxious and imposter syndrome about this particular chapter I'm working on right now, because I didn't feel like I was smart enough or capable enough to do it.
Interesting.
Look at me, I'm actually enjoying this chapter, and I think by the end of the chapter I feel like I am more proud of this chapter than I am on any other part of the dissertation I worked on so far. So,
well, and it's fascinating because you specifically said the other day that this chapter has just been flowing out. Like, it's been not writing itself, because you are definitely the one writing it, right? But it has not been pulling teeth to write it.
Yeah.
Like, it has been at other points in this process. And so like I didn't realize this was the chapter that was like holding you back.
Yeah, this one was the big scary chapter on method. So method is, for those of you who are not, the chapter I was writing the chapter on method, which is kind of like, for those of you who aren't familiar with like academic terms and stuff, it's kind of like when you had to do like proofs in mathematics, where it's like, not only do you have to know how to get the right answer, but you have to show that you know how to get the right answer in a very specific way. And so for me, that's always just feels very obnoxious. Like, just let me do my queer studies. Why do I have to show you how I'm doing it? But I'm actually having fun. So, long story short. What else though? I've been reading a lot for my dissertation, so I won't go into that too much. Beyond, I just read this book, not for my dissertation, but actually I was asked to write a review for it. So one of my first times where I was actually asked to write a review, I feel so happy. Look at this podcast, making me become a name in weird pockets of horror land. But anyway, This book called...
You've always been a name in weird pockets of Horrorland to me.
That's probably true, yeah. So this book called Queer for Fear, Horror Film and the Queer Spectator by Heather O. Petrocelli, and I just finished it. It's really good. I'll make sure it's linked in the show notes.
Sounds really cool.
I'll try to get... we'll try to see if we can get her on the podcast to talk about... like do a little book mini-sode on this, because this is basically a queer study. Like it's she did an oral history project studying queer people and their engagement with horror, and then wrote this book to kind of talk about the trends that queer people have with horror and some of her own observations about it. And it's just fascinating. And guess what Emily already knows this, but audience, guess what the favorite horror movie is of the over 5,000 survey participants, so queer people who were involved in her oral history. The favorite horror movie that they love, Alien. So back when I was going on and on and on about how much I love Alien in that movie and how much it is like integral for a lot of trans people, I feel vindicated from this book, because it's like, here's actual data to support me saying that. So anyway, what about you? Have you been reading or watching anything fun lately?
I'm still working my way through Return of the Jedi, though I am taking a social media vacation for my vacation. I might like post pictures on Instagram that go up on Facebook, but like I am not. I don't think I'm even bringing I might bring my computer, but my laptop, but I don't think I'm even bringing my laptop. Like serious break time. So I'm bringing lots of art and book stuff. So I'm planning to finish from a certain point of view. And then I'm due for my reread of Graceling, because I love that book. Also, I started reading On the Mystery by Catherine Keller.
I love that book.
Which, there's a lot more story about why I'm reading that, but I started reading that. Also, I just finished an episode of Torchwood that I'm going to talk about later in this episode, I think.
Okay, cool.
But it's the Ghost Worlds one, whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to talk about that. And I saw the, space spider episode of Doctor Who and kept saying, "It's space spiders!" And being like, "I'm sorry. Space spider." I'm not a big space spiders person, although the space spider does make a like pretty good / significant Christmas star.
Yeah.
In the sky before it gets totally blown to smithereens, because that's just what the doctors do. But I really love the introduction to Donna there.
Right.
And I forgot that then she disappears. Not disappears, but like drops off and then comes back later as a companion, and isn't just like now she's the companion.
Yeah.
So that's a fascinating.
Yeah. If we ever get to our Doctor Who, I can talk about some behind the scenes about that too. About if we ever do a Doctor Who podcast or something down the road. I've been watching
through. If we did a Doctor Who podcast, we should do it live.
Okay, I like that.
Then we don't have to
no
edit.
Right. In my Doctor Who watch through, I just finished the 10th Doctor's run. So my very next episode of Doctor Who, the revived series, will be the 11th hour, which is 11's first appearance in a full episode. And then I'm getting near the end of the second Doctor's run in Classic Who. So
the Doctor just tried to get rid of Steven, but I don't think it worked.
Right. We all want to get rid of Steven.
Back into the TARDIS. Like,
right.
Really?
Steven's a jerk. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, this is something new for us, but I'm going to see if I can get this to work. Share screen. Chrome tab. Yes. This one. Does that work? Maybe I'll just do entire screen because that works. This is what I want. Share. Okay. So you can see this.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the trailer for the new Alien film that comes out in August, Alien Romulus.
Which we're, of course, doing something on.
We'll eventually do when it comes out and comes to streaming, yes. It'll be long after season 6, but still, we'll fit it in. But because the trailer dropped today at the date of recording this, I have not seen it yet. And so I'm like, let's watch it and get live reactions for both of us of
Okay, are you
Alien
sharing
Romulus.
your audio?
I don't, how do I do that
would be
differently?
In the share screen option, I think.
I try that again. Also share audio. Share audio, share tab instead.
Because that would have been really not fun.
Right?
And kind of hilarious if you're like reacting and I'm like, I don't hear anything.
Apparently, I have to do it this way. Okay, there we go. Perfect.
Also, I took a shower and my hair's still drying, and so I'm trying to figure out how to let it still be floofy without my headphones smushing one part of it. So,
okay. Now, this should work. So.
Okay, but you're going to full screen it at some point, right?
I don't know. This is goofy. I'm not sure it'll let me full screen.
Okay, this is better. But, okay. That's bigger than it was.
Here we go. Fede Alvarez being the new director.
Don't breathe. Sounds like they're trying to breathe.
Ooh.
Ooh. It had a grabber snatcher thing.
Whoa.
Wait, who's that? Okay, wait, who was that?
I don't know.
Who's the main actor?
No clue. Let me look it up.
Peace.
The Kaylee Speeney.
Okay, because she looks like Ripley.
Yeah. I do not think she's supposed to be Ripley, but because I think this is supposed to be a prequel to the films, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Not much has been revealed about this one yet, aside from it's ignoring Prometheus and Alien Covenant, but we have yet to watch those in our watch of Alien, so.
Yeah. Wait, is Prometheus and Covenant, are those two prequels?
Yes.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. As are Alien vs. Predator and Alien vs. Predator Requiem. But they're each kind of their own weird prequel continuity. We can talk about that when we get there. But anyway, it looks really cool and it looks like truly scary. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And lots of blood. Yay.
Yeah. It's a little hard to see on my screens until I get curtains actually put in my windows. It's a little hard to see in the morning because the sun is shining directly on me.
Oh, well, that
so
would
I
be.
reflect because I'm very pale. But so the dark parts were hard to see, but it looks good.
I'm very pink, not pale. My arms can be pale, but my face is always pink. Anyway. Well, we're not talking about an Alien movie this time, as excited as I am for Alien Romulus to come out in August. But we are talking about, look at this transition, Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, directed by George Lucas, came out in 2005, when I was a freshman in college.
The year I graduated from high school.
So...
I'm only a year behind you.
Yeah. And this movie turns 20 next year. Right. Along with all these other movies. So Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe came out this year. Maybe we'll cover that in our witch season. I don't know. I don't really like it. Bewitched came out.
I feel like we should, though.
Another movie we could cover. I mean, there's so many.
Bewitched. I vote Bewitched.
I mean, I have a whole document.
Bewitched? I don't think I saw that Bewitched. It's not the Bewitched that I watched growing up. The TV show.
The TV. It is a movie based on the TV show. with Will Ferrell and why am I blanking her name? Nicole Kidman played the two main characters. And then Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So all those.
Will Ferrell, but Bewitched. We should do a boo tube.
Yeah.
For Bewitched. Yeah.
If only my co-host would.
I don't know where the document
put all these lovely ideas into that. Because right now it is like 90 suggestions of which movies from Pace and like one from Emily so far.
No, shoot.
Season 7,
6.
which.
Where's season 7? Future episodes?
Maybe. Yep, that's it.
Well, future seasons, more like.
I also feel like if we do that movie, we'd have to do the entire franchise, and I don't want to do that either.
Which entire franchise?
The Chronicles of Narnia.
There's only like 3 movies out.
Yeah. And then there's also the BBC versions, which cover all 7 movies.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the BBC versions.
They're not good either. Basically, I don't like the Chronicles of Narnia. Fight me, all of you C.S. Lewis fans. They're sexist, gross, and racist, but...
Oh, yeah. There's, like, so much in them that's... Yeah.
But anyway, so our next season, we've all but said is going to be on witches, so we might be covering one of those 3 movies, if not all 3 movies that I just named. Mm-hmm. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory also came out, the one with Johnny Depp. Batman Begins came out. Sin City.
I never actually saw the one with Johnny Depp.
It's fine. Also
I like started to watch it one time on a plane or something, and then was like,
it also has Christopher Lee in it, who plays Count Dooku, so a connection to that movie in this movie.
Batman Begins I've seen.
Yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy came out. Sky High, fun Disney superhero movie.
Okay, that was at that point I was no longer like Disney movie-ing so much.
Rude. Serenity, which is the movie sequel to Firefly TV show, came out. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, one of my favorite comedy action movies. Rent, the movie of the musical, came out. Brokeback Mountain came out.
I went to see it with... I think I went to see it with... No, maybe we rented it later. My roommate / I don't know if we were roommates then. Well, we were roommates, but I don't know if we were girlfriend. If, like, she was my girlfriend at the time or not. And best friends. And, you know, fulfill all stereotypes.
Yep. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
And then, also, I could have put this in horror, but I put it here. Peter Jackson's King Kong came out that year as well. And then in horror movie, so 2000, this is our first movie we are covering from 2005, because we haven't covered any of these movies so far. Yeah. But Phantom of the Opera, the musical version with Gerard Butler, came out.
I've seen that one.
Constantine came out. Wes Craven's Cursed, a werewolf movie. The Ring 2, the Amityville Horror movie came out. Reefer Madness came out. Love that movie. Hilarious. The musical, to be clear. House of Wax with what is her name? Paris Hilton came out. Dominican, prequel to The Exorcist, came out, which we talk about that a little bit in our Exorcist movie with TJ Tranchel when we covered that. George Romero's Land of the Dead. One of these days we'll do a zombie season with all the George Romero movies.
Ooh, and World War Z.
Yeah, The Devil's Rejects. The Exorcism of Emily Rose, one of my favorite exorcism movies. We'll cover that in exorcism
movies in 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably even more than that. I just put in here the biggest ones. Corpse Bride, which is that Tim Burton computer animated, designed to look like stop motion movie. The Fog remake, and Saw 2. So pretty big year in horror. But we're talking about Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. When was the first time you saw this one?
I was trying to think if I saw it in theaters or if... I think I saw it in theaters. It came out in May, which is tricky because I think if it had come out in December or November, then I would have definitely seen it at school. But I think I saw it in this. Well, I bet I saw it on one of our weekends because I was working at camp that summer. So probably one of the weekends we went and saw it. Would be my
Cool.
guess.
Can't
I'm not.
tell.
I don't have as vivid of a I don't have as clear of a memory of it. But
Yeah. I don't remember the details of seeing it other than I know I saw it in theaters. I'm pretty sure I saw it over summer break in between my freshman and sophomore year of college. So, yeah. So, no shots for either of us today. Unless you want to. I mean, by all
you can
means.
just have drinks because you want to drink. That's allowed.
Yeah. And drink lots of water too.
Yes.
So
much water.
I don't have too much behind the scenes here, just a little bit. So while Attack of the Clones 2, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones was in post-production, George Lucas already started working on the script for this movie. When he finished the script, it would have been close to 5 hours long had it been filmed. So they cut out huge amounts, and I think the story suffers as a result. It's kind of, it just feels the story feels very like
choppy.
Yeah. Some of this stuff that was pulled out though I wish would have been kept in. I just pulled out 2 things from the original script that I think should have stayed in and would have made it better. One is that the expanded conversation between Palpatine and Anakin while they're doing the opera thing. They're watching the weird space opera ballet thing, and they're having that weird conversation about Darth Plagueis the Wise.
Oh, I was like, I don't even know what we're talking about.
Remember that now? Sure.
Vaguely. I remember the conversation. I do not remember the space ballet opera.
Yeah. So in that conversation, while Palpatine is talking about Darth Plagueis being able to directly interfere with midichlorians and potentially learning how to keep someone alive forever, Palpatine also mentions that he himself has learned how to, in this original cutout scene, that he himself learned how to manipulate midichlorians and is indirectly Anakin's father because he manipulated the midichlorians in Shmi, and that's what created Anakin.
That's just like it's giving that one doctor in like Ohio who was a fertility doctor, and
right? Just kept him using his own spunk. Yeah. And then there's
also like brings a whole new, like, if you think about it that way, then Kylo Ren and Rey.
Yeah, so Kylo Ren would be Palpatine's grandson? No, great-grandson.
But Rey is granddaughter.
Rey is his granddaughter, yeah. So his granddaughter and his great-grandson hooking up. That's a little weird.
I mean, they shouldn't be hooking up anyway because that was not the kind of relationship that they actually had, and that kiss was like fake and forced. But
yeah. Yay, compet. Anyway. But the other subplot, I really like this, and I wish they would have kept it. So there's this abandoned subplot about Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and Padme coming together as Emperor Palpatine is starting to like gain his power and stuff. And so they wanted to come together to start the rebellion. And in this, Padme learns of Anakin's killing of the Jedi and the younglings of the temple, and she begins to feel that since Anakin is so powerful, no one can kill him. She thinks that the only way that he can be stopped is if she does it. So she goes to Mustafar to kill him, and that's why he force chokes her. And so that is kind of the abandoned subplot, and all this stuff was kind of abandoned so Lucas could focus on Anakin's story because he thought that the rest was a distraction. He wanted to really focus on Anakin's fall to the dark side. Which even
the best part of
and it also doesn't really work right now, but we'll get there when I talk about some of the book insights. But do you have the last kind of trivia about this is the movie is called Revenge of the Sith. And the original title for Star Wars Episode 6 was Revenge of the Jedi. But Lucas was like, oh, Jedi don't commit revenge. That's why he called it Return of the Jedi. So he's kind of referencing that original title and saying, yes, the Sith do take revenge. And that's one of the differences between Jedi and Sith. So kind of an intentional connection to Return of the Jedi there, the third part of the original trilogy, and this being the third part of the prequel trilogy. So, one sentence summary.
R2's one bot action dramedy.
Love it. R2 definitely is like should be the main character. Is in some ways and should have been even more the main character.
Yeah.
Yes.
Should have gotten an Oscar.
Yep. Mine is Revenge of Space.
Of course it is.
So, before we walk through the film, like since this season 6 also had like a book club element to it, and this movie as it is kind of choppy, as you said, and a mess. The novelization of this movie is widely considered to be one of the best Star Wars books written. One of the best. I think there are plenty that are better and stuff, but this is still a very good novel. And it was written by Matthew Stover. He was given permission by George Lucas to expand parts of the plot and stuff and kind of fill in some of those inconsistencies and stuff. And so the novel really helps the film work because the film for me doesn't work.
The film does not quite work.
Right?
Agreed.
So, and it also...
Having not read the book.
Yeah, and it also contextualizes Anakin's fall to the dark side, which Clone Wars did too. So I really love how Clone Wars, we see his disillusionment with Ahsoka leaving the Jedi Order and his disillusionment with the Jedi Order and all that stuff. But this adds to that. So here's just a few things from the book. Definitely go out and get the book, though, if you're interested. This is just a few things, not even all that the book contains. But one thing that...
Also, just go to our bookshop.org affiliate link and the book.
Yeah, I mean, that whenever you click the book links in the profile, whenever I put a link to a book in our episode description, that goes to bookshop.org or through our affiliate link. And so so just click on that and buy the book that way, and you'll give us a little bit, like a few pennies here and there.
Yeah. They add up. Because 1 plus 1 equals 2. Even if for many Christians 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 1.
Yes. Nerdy math Christian joke. Anyway.
It's Kay's joke.
It's also very on brand, though, for y'all.
Yeah, totally on brand for me, but not actually mine.
The book, just like the movie, starts off with the Battle of Coruscant. But this being a book, we get to hear a lot more of Palpatine and Dooku's conversations during this, when Dooku supposedly has Palpatine as prisoner, but we know that they're actually in league with each other and stuff like that.
Yeah, so, when they did that, I was like,
Yeah, so what we hear from Palpatine's plans, this is how Palpatine thinks it's going to go down. He thinks that their trick, of course, is to lure the Jedi there. They know that it's probably going to be Obi-Wan and Anakin because they are kind of like the poster boys for this, and that they're who will be trusted the most with this kind of thing.
They're the Captain America of the Jedi Order.
Yeah. So Palpatine is expecting Anakin and Obi-Wan to show up, and he's hoping that this duel will allow Dooku to defeat Obi-Wan and kill him, leaving Anakin without a master, and then Palpatine can be like, hey, Anakin, come over here, join my side. And
which is why Palpatine is so very eager to leave Obi-Wan behind.
Yes.
And it's like, no, there's no hope for... And it's like, that is the most ridiculous statement of all of these statements we're making.
Right. But we find out Dooku's plans, though, are different. Dooku's apprentice was Qui-Gon, and so Qui-Gon's apprentice was Obi-Wan. So in a sense, like, Obi-Wan is kind of his family in a sense. And so Dooku secretly doesn't want to kill Obi-Wan, and Dooku actually is hoping that he can convince Obi-Wan to join him, overthrow Palpatine, and then the two of them can rebuild the Jedi Order, is what Dooku's plans are.
So
We learn from the
Dooku
book.
thinks he's still a Jedi?
No, the reason he left the Jedi is because he feels that the Jedi were becoming too militaristic and police for the Republic and stuff like that. He didn't like it. And he thought they lost the way of the Force. So he wanted to rebuild the Jedi Order with Obi-Wan's help. First destroy the Order, then rebuild it with Obi-Wan's help. Dooku's clearly not understanding Obi-Wan, though, because that's something Obi-Wan would never do. We've seen this again and again. But whatever. That's Dooku's plans, apparently.
But also, like, I would think that Palpatine would know better as well, and he doesn't, and then somehow it still works. So maybe I'm the one who doesn't know Anakin well enough.
But then we all know that's not what happens. Anakin defeats Dooku, kills him at Palpatine's urging, and you can see the look of betrayal on Dooku's face in the film, too, when this happens. But another thing we learn from the book is that Anakin has lots of visions and has throughout his entire life, Force visions.
Which we kind of knew in episode 1.
Episode 2, when he knows his mom is going to die.
Did
he have them in 1 too?
He talked about, like, knowing things are going to happen before they do, kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's
true.
And
then that's explained as, like, that's why he's so good at pod racing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Anakin... So we learned that Anakin had a few visions in this. One is that Anakin knew that he was going to defeat Dooku before the battle happens. And so when he defeats Dooku, he, like, on the journey to defeating Dooku, he says to Obi-Wan, "Today I think we're going to win the war. We're going to defeat Dooku. I had a Force vision about it." And then he defeats Dooku. The war doesn't end then, but still. He also had a vision about, apparently, when he was a child. And
Wait, so he had a vision of him decapitating Dooku?
No. But he did have a vision of Dooku being defeated by him and Obi-Wan. It didn't give the specifics of how Dooku was defeated. But also when he was a child, another vision he apparently had that the novel talks about is he had a vision that he and Padme would one day start a relationship, and that happened. That could also just be called, wishful thinking, but we'll call it a Force vision here because that's how he interprets it. And then, of course, throughout the book, he gets lots of visions of Padme's death. And so what we learn from this is that Anakin's visions up to this point have always come true. And so that adds to, like, he just knows that Padme is going to die, even though everybody's telling him visions don't always come true and stuff like that. So that adds that. We also learned that Anakin can sense that Mace Windu fears him. And so because of that, Anakin does not trust Mace Windu and feels like an outcast in the Order. We also know that when he finds out Padme is pregnant, he wants to leave the Jedi Order so the two of them can raise the child.
Yeah, but it mentions, like, in one line, there's a one-liner on it.
Yeah, but it is Padme who convinces him to stay. And the reason Padme convinces him to stay is because she thinks that he is kind of the, like, Captain America, like you said, the poster boy for the Republic. And so her as a senator, this is kind of her own feelings of being senator, and her allegiance as a senator getting in the way because she thinks he is too important to the Republic for him to leave. And then we also, like, in the movie, it just seems like he's a petulant child when he's not given the rank of master when he joins the council. But in this we find...
should have seen coming. It's not like they picked him.
Yep. But in the book, we find out that the reason he wants to be a master is because he gets access to the complete Jedi archives, and he's looking for a way to save Padme's life. And so he feels like that knowledge is locked behind the master paywall. So
what is it? The academia is the behind the...
Oh, the Ivory Palace, the Ivory Tower.
Yeah, Ivory Tower.
So he's feeling like that information he could get access to that if he was a master, and that's why he's so upset when he's so close to being a master, but not quite. And then towards the end of the book, he doesn't see Padme for a long time. It's not clear from the movie, but he's off fighting things and stuff, and Padme's off doing senator things. So Palpatine starts saying, Anakin, I heard a rumor that there's a senator who is dating a Jedi. And Anakin's like, well, you all know. I mean, you already know that's me and Padme. And Palpatine's like, no, it's definitely Padme, but she's been seen with Obi-Wan. And so he starts planting that seed. And so that is one of the reasons why when Obi-Wan shows up at the end off of Padme's ship, he's like, shit, it's true. Both of you, I'm so mad at both of you. And you betrayed me, Padme, and stuff like that, because he thought that they were having an affair. So that adds some context there.
Which, like, you're allowed to feel jealous, but polycules, they function weird.
Right. And also, of all the things we know about Obi-Wan, that is also something that is so out of character for Obi-Wan.
Right? Yeah. There's a lot that we'll get more into with Palpatine too, but
we also learn from the book that the Jedi Council is a little too late on this, but the Jedi Council now, throughout the entire book, is trying to find a way to disentangle themselves from the Republic, because they have found that the Republic is falling.
And they realize they shouldn't be.
Yes, and they realize that the war is doing that. So they're trying to find a way to separate from the Republic Chancellor, and that also gives them the idea to have Anakin spy on the Chancellor, because they're like, well, how can we kind of get evidence and stuff to distance ourselves, and how, not just evidence, but like how can we find out what's happening in the Republic side, because the Republic is so messed up right now.
Yeah, but like, which is all of this is just super frustrating, because they're like telling Anakin, we don't trust Palpatine. Yeah. Obi-Wan is telling Anakin, the Council doesn't trust Palpatine. And then Anakin just keeps on buddying with Palpatine, and then is like mad when they're like, we don't trust you, because you are basically unquestioningly supporting Palpatine and doing what he says, and expecting unreasonable accommodations for just because Palpatine likes you. That's not how the Jedi Order works. That's not how it should work.
And also, the book does a really good job too of talking about Obi-Wan throughout. And so Obi-Wan is just so heartbroken when the Jedi Order wants that, because Obi-Wan knows Anakin is like, this is going to backfire, and the Jedi Order just say, nope, we're doing it anyway, we're going to have him spy on. So, but Obi-Wan says, no, one of Anakin's worst and best traits is he is so fucking loyal to the people he cares about. He is not going to spy on Palpatine. And Mace is like, too bad, we're doing it anyway. But part of the reasoning for that, though, is because Mace sees the relationship between Anakin and Palpatine, and Mace thinks that by allowing Anakin to be on the council and having him spy on the inner workings of the Republic, that will actually make Anakin become disillusioned with Palpatine and be brought back into the ranks. And Obi-Wan's like, no, that's not going to work. And clearly it doesn't work. Because Mace, believe it or not, as much as he's scared of Anakin, actually is impressed with Anakin too, according to the book. And then
that makes sense. Like he in the movie he seems cautious, but it's a caution born out of wisdom. Like, he doesn't always play it out right, but he has a good idea of.
Mace seems to make the most unwise decisions throughout the entire prequel trilogy. Like, yes, let's have the Jedi join the Clone War. Let's have the Jedi.
I mean, he was like not super for the Clone Wars in the movie.
Yeah. And then he's also like, he and Yoda have that little argument at the end of Attack from Clones where Mace is like, we should inform the Senate that we can't see the future anymore. And Yoda's like, no. no, because that would just play into the Dark Lord's hands.
But
So
also,
it's
like, I'm with Mace in the, like, integrity about this.
yes,
like,
yes, but I don't know. I just find Mace's decisions questionable throughout. But anyway, so Obi-Wan, though, there's this fantastic quote in the book that I'll just read. So after Obi-Wan and Anakin have that huge epic duel, and he cuts off Anakin's limbs, this is now from the book. Obi-Wan looked down. It would be a mercy to kill him, to kill Anakin. He was not feeling merciful. He was feeling calm and clear, and he knew that to climb down to that black beach might cost him more time than he had. Another Sith Lord approached. In the end, there was only one choice. It was a choice that he had made many years before, when he had passed his trials of Jedi knighthood and swore himself to the Jedi forever. In the end, he was still Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he was still a Jedi, and he would not murder a helpless man. He would leave it to the will of the Force. And so that helps give some of the reasons why Obi-Wan didn't finish Anakin off in that battle.
Yeah.
Because the movie isn't very clear.
As opposed to Anakin and Dooku.
Yeah. And then the last thing that I'll leave. There's so much in the book. I could just spend the whole podcast talking about the book, but I won't. The last thing I'll talk about, though.
I didn't read the book.
Yeah. So the last quick thing I'll talk about, though, is Yoda and Obi-Wan have a discussion at the end of the book, which is so good, and it plays right into the sequel trilogy too, which we'll talk about a lot there. But so this is after Anakin has been defeated, after Mustafar and stuff, and Obi-Wan and Yoda reunite on Bail Organa's ship before they both go into exile. They have a quick discussion about Obi-Wan saying, when the time is right, we should rebuild the Jedi Order, and maybe these two children are the way to do it. And Yoda says, no, if we were to rebuild the Jedi Order, we shouldn't rebuild the Jedi Order. We should start over fresh, because it is the Jedi's failings that have led to this moment. It is their strong feelings that you can't have attachments, you can't love, you can't have these relationships. And he said that was a mistake. And so I love that Yoda has learned that in the book, and there's no sign of that in the movie, but it's just a really cool piece.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that part, because Yoda had some supremely questionable advice.
Right?
This movie.
Yep. Which is clear he still felt at the time, but then it didn't take until the very end of the book / movie for him to realize, oh wait, I was wrong. This was bad. So
yeah.
Okay, now we can get to the movie. So those of you, go out and read the book. It's really good. I promise it's worth it. So we'll start off with the space fight right at the beginning, and Anakin, the very first screen of Anakin, we see him with this beaming smile, and the reason why is because he had literally just seen Ahsoka right before this assignment and gifted her the 2 lightsabers. We find this out from Clone Wars. So he's so happy because he just saw his good friend and stuff like that, and that's why he's so happy when this movie starts. It makes my heart happy because I love their relationship, Anakin and Ahsoka.
Yeah. I do really like this scene because it's just like comedy, pure comedy. Here, let me shoot the droids off of your plane and try not to hit you.
Right.
At the same time, Anakin, it's not Womp Rats in Tatooine. Right. But then R2-D2 is the best when they get on the when they crash into the ship. Which there has to be a way to communicate with a droid without the droid having to play. There has to be a droid equivalent of earbuds for communicators. The fact that R2-D2 just has to use have an appendage, so risk the integrity of his body as a defensive little bullet thing to hold out the communicator device.
Right.
And then it's just broadcasting it everywhere. And oh gosh. And then Obi-Wan's like, R2, do this. R2, do that. And R2's like, shut up, I'm gonna get caught. And
Right.
then like does the things and then gets caught and then
Yep.
just like, let me just spurt oil everywhere, and while they're all like slip sliding around, start his little jet engines and set them all on fire.
Right.
Start with fire, end with fire.
You would have thought, exactly. You would have also thought, though, that they would have learned by in the 20 years between this movie and A New Hope but the exact same thing happens with C-3PO, where he has a communicator on the Death Star and they're trapped in the thing, and he has to hide the communicator because the stormtroopers come in, which is why he's not able to stop the trash compactor right away and stuff like that. It's like, come on, people. With all this advanced technology, there are some gaps here. Like your OBGYN care is a big gap too. We'll get there.
Oh my gosh. That is the worst. Yeah. But yeah, and I mean, C-3PO memory wiped the whole time, and so like wouldn't have thought of it, but yeah, they should have better technology than this. Even if it was a long time ago.
Yeah, in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah, and then the whole fight, like the whole Anakin, Palpatine, Obi-Wan, Dooku thing, it is tricky with the Force, because is there really such a thing as someone who is helpless when they can use Force lightning and use the Force? It's question number 1. Question number 2, Anakin knows the right thing to do. Palpatine specifically uses his little Gollum voice and is like, do it. And then Anakin does it. Yep. And like, it's every turn in this movie, Anakin just like doesn't even want to see. Like, it is so very obvious how Palpatine is manipulating him, and he just doesn't want to see it at all.
Yeah. But I mean, those of us who have been in abusive relationships or manipulative relationships, you often don't see it from the people you care about the most. And if Anakin and Palpy are besties, he might not. Probably wouldn't see it.
I mean, there's a huge power differential.
Yes.
But yeah. Also, but like the thing that got me the most though was the ease with which Palpatine and the enthusiasm with which Palpatine was trying to leave Obi-Wan behind.
Right.
And that should have been a red flag, because you don't do that to your partner. Like, somebody's trying to get between you and someone you're in a relationship with.
Yep.
That's not how polyamory works.
Right.
And Anakin just like, whoop.
Yep.
Yeah.
I do like for all his faults, at least in this moment, he's able to stand up for the people he cares about. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving him. His fate will be the same as ours. Yeah. It's something he does not do literally any time else in the rest of this movie with Palpatine. So good job for having a backbone in this one scene.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say having a backbone necessarily, but yeah, it is the one time he's like, no. But then he doesn't, like, it's the, like, he gets half of it. He doesn't see the red flag of it, but he also doesn't give in to it.
Yeah.
I do love that the line when their ship is going down, they're like, Anakin's like, I'd say the ability to pilot this ship is irrelevant.
Right?
Yep. You just gotta crash land it well. Also, although the OBGYN system care in the Empire is shit, the hair care and the styles are spectacular. Because Padme in one day goes from perfect ear buns to abundant perfect curls that she can also brush with a brush, and they don't get frizzy and they don't lose their like shape and distinction. Like,
yep.
They'd be all day for either of those.
But
or at least half a day.
Do we know it was the same exact day? Because one of the weird things about this movie is it takes place over a period about 9 months, but it's hard to tell that. It feels like if you're watching it, oh, this happened in a week. It's like, no, this is supposed to be over about 9 months.
Yeah, but this one felt like that night. Like, he arrives, and then that night they're hanging out, getting it on. Yeah.
Let's get it on.
Get it on. Get it on. Also, maybe it's just like the cameras in the TARDIS.
All
So
right.
it just like opens up.
There needs to be a Doctor Who Star Wars crossover. There's a Doctor Who Star Trek crossover in the comics, but not a Star Wars crossover.
I didn't know that. Also in that space of like, okay, what do they do with Padme and Anakin? That's the part I was just like, Padme, do you think Obi-Wan would help us? Yes, of course, he would. He already knows about his metamor.
Right.
He will help you too. It's called compersion. He'll do it.
Yep.
And then Anakin's like, I don't need Obi-Wan's help.
Right. Okay, Anakin.
I'm going to be independent except for my absolute subservience to Palpatine.
Exactly. And what's kind of clear in the movie is not as clear, but you can kind of tell Obi-Wan knows what's going on. But in Clone Wars, the TV show, and also the book, like Obi-Wan has known about Anakin and Padme for a while. So, and he is kind of like an unspoken secret for a lot of it, but he knows.
Yeah, he very obviously knows. Yep. I do love Obi-Wan on the dinosaur planet. It's fantastic.
It's cute. And that fight with him and Grievous is pretty fun too.
Yeah. The like note to self, don't kick a cyborg. And then the like, only a Sith deals in absolutes, which, not actually accurate because you're dealing with an absolute there. But also,
but that's kind of
comment.
like, well, okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, I loved your comment when we were watching of like, only the cisheads deal in absolutes and binaries.
Right. But I also, because absolutely true. But
absolutely true.
Yeah, to be perfectly queer. Only cisheads deal in absolutes and binaries. But I feel like this line gets made fun of a lot. The only a Sith deals in absolutes, but it feels a lot like that. What is the word? There's that conundrum. I can't think of the exact word, but like where people talk about to have a progressive society that is inclusive of people, one needs to be exclusive of people who want to harm.
Yeah.
So it's like to have the more inclusive a society is, the more exclusive it has to be about a specific group of people who want to harm others. And that kind of feels like a similar thing here. It's like, yes, it is technically an absolute to say only a Sith deal is an absolute, but it's still like a good point. Like there is so much gray area in the world and in life. We should not think so stubbornly in this dualistic binary kind of thinking.
Yeah. So yeah, I think part of that too, part of the way that I've heard that particular like phrasing and idea talked about that I found really helpful is to kind of shift it from, in order to have an inclusive society, you have to exclude people, to, and this is more like congregation based, I think, is in order to have an inclusive society, you have like excluding, very explicitly excluding certain behaviors, which gives a little bit more flexibility for like and consistency, right? Like where you're saying, yeah, we want to be inclusive. In order to do that, it is not okay to use words or actions to harm or seek to harm others. And that's where we get the like inciting violence and all of those things that are, as we are seeing currently with a presidential candidate, illegal. Like you are guilty of those. You can be found guilty of those things even if you did not technically do the thing yourself.
Yeah. And so I think going back to that line though, that's why I kind of think Obi-Wan is trying to say is, the behavior of having these absolute right versus wrong with no gray area, no room for contextualization and stuff is what is harmful. Yeah. Even though that itself is an absolute.
Yeah. Agreed. Also, how did Palpatine not get clocked as a Force user?
That is a good question. I think There is a book called The Legend of Darth Plagueis or something like that that goes into Palpatine's earlier life, and I think that explains um, some of it. But we've known that his like one of his force powers is to mask his power in the force. So even if he, as a kid, unintentionally before he turned evil, was doing that, I mean that could explain it. I don't know though. I don't know if there's a canon reason for it or not.
Yeah. He did. I don't know if he ever. So that raises the question of if he learned the fancy fight moves or not, as the like Tai Chi version of slow and dramatic.
Yeah.
But he definitely learned to let go of them if he ever knew them, because definitely killed a whole bunch of Jedi.
There yeah,
Easy
there's
peasy.
a specific style of fighting with a lightsaber that is the style that Mace Windu also uses that channels dark side of the force. And is it a coincidence that the Black Jedi leader uses a style of lightsaber technique that uses the dark side of the force? I don't know. Let's go ask the thinkers
No,
behind that.
no, dear listeners, it is not a
But anyway,
coincidence. Have you met George Lucas?
right.
No, neither have I, but I've seen enough evidence.
But anyway,
I
the
didn't know that
Sith
about us.
users use one of the styles of Force use has very few of those fancy movements, and it channels dark side energy, and that seems to be both the style that not Anakin, that Darth Vader uses when he becomes Darth Vader, but also Palpatine uses, and also Mace Windu uses, and stuff like that.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
but yeah, it just goes to show you that all that fancy flourishes isn't actually helpful when you're doing a lightsaber duel, as Emily has been saying all along.
Yep. Yeah. I did appreciate the no, the yeah. Back to Palpatine. I'm having trouble because I think I forgot that my comments went on to the second page. So I think some of my comments are actually out of order, but also the movie itself jumped around so much that
Yeah.
I'm having trouble keeping track. Um, but the like Palpatine tries to electrocute Mace Windu, and Mace uses his lightsaber to rebound it onto
Yep.
Palpatine. And then Palpatine pretends like he is not in control of the
Right.
lightning that he is causing to lightning himself.
Right. It's like literally just stop.
And
And
it
he's like,
is
no,
so
dying.
obvious.
Right.
Right? It is so obvious. You can see electricity coming from his fingers. And Anakin walks in and is like, I wonder what. Anakin just told them that Palpatine is the Sith Lord.
Yeah. But the motivations for him, though, here is he thinks at this point that Palpatine is the only one who can help him keep Padme alive. So if Mace kills Palpatine here, then he loses his ability to keep Padme alive.
Yeah. It's just. Ugh.
It's a mess.
I do like the horror trope that makes its way into the thing though, of
Yeah.
like, there's no sign of his body, sir, about Yoda, and then Palpatine's like, then he's not dead. Yep, solid horror trope knowledge. Well done.
Yep. Yep.
Well done.
And then we get to the final act of the movie, which just has one of the coolest duels in Star Wars history. Of that duel between Obi-Wan and, at this point, Vader, because Anakin has said he's taken on the name Vader. And I just want to point out to all the Anakin fans out there that Anakin is supposedly this great lightsaber duelist. He loses to Obi-Wan every single fucking time he fights Obi-Wan, except that very last, once in the TV show Obi-Wan, which we'll cover with Emily because no spoilers, I haven't seen that. But
That's
then
a spoiler. Spoilers. Just
but
kidding.
Obi-Wan only
I had
really
coffee.
truly loses to Vader though in that scene in A New Hope, and even that it seems like he was intentionally losing.
He
So it's
literally
like,
returned to the Force
yeah,
before
The blade even
The
hits him.
blade. Yeah. Everything
Yep.
crumbles and then the blade goes by.
Yep.
Like, there's no singed clothing. Just disappears.
Yep.
Also,
But
he took like most of his clothes, just not his cloak.
yeah.
Did not leave any underwear behind. Oh, right. I forgot. In this
No
universe,
underwear
no
in
underwear in
space.
space.
If you're a Jedi or a woman. If you're a man, you might be allowed to have underwear. But that kind of gets us to this while we're in this third arc. What the fuck is the OBGYN care in this world? First of all, how did Padme not know she was pregnant with twins until literally they were coming out of her?
Right? Okay, there is here's a possible headcanon that I just thought of right now. Potentially, like I could see not knowing it right away. But I think there is a space to wonder if she figured it out. Like, I think it's baffling that Anakin doesn't know because he's so supremely aware of her body from day 2 of knowing her
Mm-hmm.
as a kid. But I think it's possible that by the time she found out that she was having, like, she realized she was having twins, she was suspicious of Anakin.
It's true. That
Especially
could be.
given the novelization stuff.
Yeah.
And so didn't want to, like, cared a lot about these kids and wanted to make sure they were okay to the best of her ability
Yeah.
before she pulled a Voldemort's
Because
mom.
there's. Yeah.
And
There's
then
this
didn't so yeah.
so in the movie what we get is there's this long gap where Anakin and Padme don't interact at all. And so we assume a few months have gone by. So she could have conceivably found out by then.
Mm-hmm.
So the scene that they have, their reunion, happens right after he killed all the younglings in the Jedi Temple. And Padme in that scene looks terrified of Anakin. Shout out to Natalie Portman's acting because she looks legit terrified of him. So that headcanon totally works for me because that's right before he leaves to Mustafar and she follows him and stuff like that. And so but yeah, nobody except possibly her knew she was pregnant with twins. Wild. But also she died in childbirth. I have so many questions. And like, yes, we can say Anakin force choked her and stuff like that, but like the droid says there's nothing physiologically wrong with her body, so she just dies of a broken heart while magically giving birth to babies who are healthy, like giving her last energy to the children so they can live on without her, which is just so sexist and gross.
So much. Okay, there's so much. And as we like, this obviously is transitioning into our deep theological discussions.
Yep.
There's so much. I think if Susanna were on, there would be even more because she would be able to pick it apart in a way that I think you and I can do okay at, but she's like specially trained at. But the like, it is complicated, right? Like she, yes, was force choked and was not okay, but also like that was like recoverable, and then it's like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, how is she doing? And part of it is yes, the like massive sexism of George Lucas is awful, and it is not actually the pregnant person's job to give up their life for the fetus. That's not a faithful thing. Like in Judaism, which is where most Christians like, which shares the scriptures that most Christians use to make pro-life arguments, Judaism doesn't consider fetuses alive. It is at first breath.
I would say most sects of Judaism do not consider fetuses alive.
Okay. Well,
there are some sects
all of the ones I know of.
Yes. All the progressive ones, all the ones that are biblically literate, all of those ones, yes.
And so they like, it is like there are specific laws about that address like if something happens to someone who's pregnant and there's a miscarriage, this is how you approach it versus that. But it is the life of the pregnant person is primary until there is breath and life. And so there's like that in and of itself is like, there is no biblical argument for life begins at conception or fetus or whatever. Like fertilization, whatever. Despite all of the terrible, terrible things happening right now.
So for that one awful verse everyone likes to proof text about, I knew you while you were knit together in your mother's womb, which
But
seems to
even
imply
that is not.
Yeah, and when you take it out of context, it's really messed up.
But it's not that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, so there's just like all of that stuff of like, what even is it? And then the way that the OBGYN, the way that the birth happens, like, I've seen a few, and never have they been that simple, that easy, that few people, those few, like, nobody is there encouraging her, making sure she breathes, any of that.
Right.
Obi-Wan is literally standing right there and doing nothing for his metamor. Like,
right.
What the fuck? You know better than this, Obi. Like, if we're talking about, I think you have me on Obi-Wan is one of the solid, the genuinely solid people with integrity in this whole franchise. He is one of the ones. But like, he should be encouraging her. He should be with her, anything. And instead, she's like, comatose, pops out a kid. Comatose, pops out a kid, dies.
Comes out of it long enough to just name the kids, then dies.
Right? And it's just like, this doesn't make sense. And it
right.
And then you have like this wall of window and all of these males watching from behind the window.
Yeah, no woman there. Just the only thing is the most terrifying droid ever who goes, ooh-bah, ooh-bah, as she's giving birth.
Right, that like announces whether the kid has a penis or a vagina in a different language.
Right. Ooh,
yeah. And so it's just like childbirth as spectacle, even.
Yeah.
And there's so much.
And also just this like Santa, and this is something that happens in our culture too, of like the way that the medical industry, it's been getting better in recent years, but just like has very much like sanitized childbirth, taking it out of homes, taking away midwives, turned it into this medical procedure that male doctors perform upon women and childbearing people, as opposed to this more communal thing that it used to be and still is in many parts of the world. And thankfully there's some shift on that, but like this like it's not even a human with her, it is a droid.
And then
like
Obi-Wan
it just is so like, sterile, right?
Pops up like a Muppet with the baby in arms.
Yeah. It's just
yeah, it's bad. And I've been working my way for Nerds at Church through our first season in line with the Revised Common Lectionary to kind of clean up a little bit and then also get it with captions on YouTube. And I just did the Maundy Thursday episode from our first season, and we included Psalm 22 in that because a lot of people do a stripping of the altar for it. And Psalm 22 has God as midwife. And so we did like a special shout out to Laya from And Burn the Ashes and to Shifra and Pua from the Bible, but like two midwives who follow literally the work and call of God in Psalm 22 of midwifing and helping people to give birth. And then to have like, so this is what happens when cishet white guys create futuristic worlds. We knew this, but still.
And so, like, Star Wars, I would say every single Star Wars movie, except maybe the High Republic show that will be coming out soon, but like, I would say is a dystopic future. Like, I do not want to live in the Star Wars universe. It'd be cool to have force powers, but chances are you wouldn't be one of the people with force powers. You'd be one of the trillions of people without it. And you'd be living this capitalistic hellscape with no good OBGYN care. Huge amounts of poverty, slavery. Like, that world is, the Star Wars universe is just so gross. I do not want to live there.
It's bad. It's real bad. Yeah.
Star Trek is much better. Yay, space communism.
But also still written by white people because they're boldly going where no one has gone before, and when they show up, people are already there.
Yes, the original shows of now Star Wars is much more diverse in its creative leadership.
Yes, but the originals.
Yes.
The premise.
Also, my glasses just broke, so this is going to be fun. I mean,
Oh,
they're
no.
presently functioning, but I'll have to get glue or something to fix them so I can get a new eye doctor appointment. Anyway, yeah, dystopia future.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so next thing I guess is we have one of the promises we told all of you is that we would be in the season approaching Star Wars from a horror lens, which we have not been doing as consistently as I would have liked. So I apologize.
So I was like, oh, this definitely has to go in.
Yeah.
Yeah. We both realized it for this episode.
So I want to say, like, first and foremost, yes, we have our expansive definition and everything can be horror if you want it to be. In this, I feel like there are definitely, I would call it horror in some ways, but there are legitimate horrifying things about it. The dystopia is one thing. It's just this kind of setting of this fall of the Republic into this empire of oppression and stuff like that. But also, there's just like a lot of scary stuff in here. Like, I have a friend who has young kids or who had young kids when this came out and said that the kids, I think they're like 8 or 9, were too scared of the scene at the end with Anakin's immolation, which you'll talk about in a moment. But just like there are legitimately scary moments in this movie, and that's one of them.
Yeah, that definitely for me was body horror. Like the burn, you watch his face, and it's giving Freddy's, like, it's giving Freddy.
Yeah.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Because you watch his body transform, and like particularly right now where we just had a very public self-immolation for the purpose of drawing attention and action to ending the genocide against Palestinians, particularly in Gaza. And like, this is a very different kind, right? Like, this is not a political statement, though self-immolation a lot of times is. But like, this is not, I have to figure out how to say this. For those of us who have witnessed or experienced or been around people who have burned themselves, particularly in big ways, right? Not just like put your hand on the stove kind of ways. It is profound how that affects you and how that gets into you, because there is like the smell, the visual, the auditory, like, and when it is this bad, like, it is a miracle that Anakin is alive. You really would be dead. Like, you're not going to survive that. But I guess if you put all of your medical and scientific knowledge towards, reviving burned up bodies instead of
providing OBGYN
care, then maybe, I guess.
Yeah. And in fact, Anakin, the only reason, another quick little book aside, the only reason Anakin survived at all was because of his hatred and anger connecting him to the dark side of the Force, which was allowing him to grasp onto life until Palpatine was able to revive him. Do that, but he would not have been able to. A typical human would not have been able to survive. It was literally only the Force that allowed Anakin to survive that.
And like, if it were, I was about to say Buddha, if it were a light force, like a Jedi, they would probably not survive because they would accept.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Darth Vader, in and of himself, like, we see the mask and stuff get put on this, and we see his immense power and stuff, but like, Darth Vader is known as one of the scariest villains for kids to this day. Like, his mask, everything, he's just a very scary presence. And so that too, I would say, is horror. And seeing that final scene when he finally turns into Vader and like screams no in that really bad way is kind of campy and laughably funny, but it's also like legit terrifying too, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And I think one of the things about horror is that I have been like noticing is that it's so superhero movies. Shout out to Nerds at Church season 6. 5,
5.
season 5. Shout out to Nerds at Church season 5. I can count. Superhero type movies, the superhero so frequently is somehow specially designated. There is something different about them. There's something unique that nobody else could possibly have. And Kay and I are definitely going to unpack that a whole bunch. But in horror movies, it is very clear that there is a path. I mean, like Freddy's story in Nightmare on Elm Street gets complicated because they do the like retconning of like you were born from this shitty situation to this and that like destined you to be an evil person. But like I don't think he was destined to be an evil person, and the point of them is that it is regular people who
Yeah.
then thing after thing after thing happens to them, and it shifts and twists and manipulates them into this, right? So we see, however terribly it's done and illogically it's done, we do see Anakin go from little innocent kid who races who does pod racing because he's enslaved and
Right.
it's an outlet that he can do, to Anakin, while still, well, I don't know, maybe that's right after he takes on Vader. But to Anakin, who literally goes and does his own slaughter of the holy innocents, killing all of the younglings. And it just like there is this way in which I think horror helps us realize, and maybe you might have said this from the book that you're reading, Queers for Fear. But that horror helps us realize how easily we can become the victim. That it is possible for regular humans to be, or not the victim, the villain. That it is possible for regular humans to become the villain.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think we wrestle with that enough because we're outside of horror. Like that is just, it is so horrific of an idea. Nobody wants to consider it.
Yeah. And kind of the last horror thing related to that too, that I want to touch on specifically is what we have learned from the expanded lore of Star Wars, but we even start to see it in this movie and we see it elsewhere too, is that Darth Vader, from the point that he puts the suit on until when he dies in Return of the Jedi, is in pain constantly. His body he is always experiencing pain. And the only way to soothe it is to leave that suit and go in that little giant egg of the weird liquid we see him in Empire Strikes Back. And that like helps soothe the pain, but it's still there. And so one of the reasons Darth Vader is so powerful is because he fuels that pain fuels that pain, and his hatred is the fuel for the dark side to continue to grow within him and be used as power. But that's just such a horrifying existence to think of, like a life of, I mean, so many of us live with constant pain and stuff, but just like, I don't think people realize that Darth Vader as a character lives with chronic, constant, never-ending pain, and that is part of his character.
Yeah, because we don't get those glimpses in the original trilogy. And I do think that it is a powerful witness, particularly like I think about people who have fibromyalgia, right? Where it literally, from how it's been described to me, like it feels like your joints are on fire, like your nerves are on fire. It is a constant pain, a different kind of constant pain than Darth Vader's, which feels like that plus other stuff.
Yeah.
Which is connected to, right, like people who have had amputations and phantom limbs and those sorts of things. But that for those of us who don't have chronic pain of that to that extent or that extreme, or just in general, like I have a sore back when I wake up is not chronic pain. But it I think thinking more deeply about that and having that stated more explicitly helps us to then also be more reflective on how much harder people with chronic pain have to work
Yeah.
to exist, to be okay,
Mm-hmm.
to not be Darth Vader, right? Like,
right.
You could do a Snickers commercial, right, with like Darth Vader, and then eat a Snickers, and then you get whatever
Yeah.
non-Darth Vader, right? But like,
You get Kid Anakin back, I guess.
right? Yes.
Jake Lloyd comes back.
That would be fantastic. I would love that, especially if you just did like the adult one, like Jake Lloyd as an adult.
Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, but I think that that's another like key point.
Yeah, I mean, I have chronic pain myself. It's not nowhere near how I imagined this level to be, and there are days when I legit like I'm so angry at myself, so angry at the world because of the pain. Like I can only imagine. So
yeah.
The other thing I want to talk about that's kind of in our in our introduction that we promise we'll talk about all the time, and we have been talking about, is queerness. And so Emily has been going on and on about the polycule happening here and the metamors and stuff, and
they're just so cute.
Yeah,
until Anakin goes full-blown evil.
right. So go back and listen to our polyamory episodes. We have 3 of them. There's supposed to be a 4th that will come out one day, before the eschaton, maybe. But
someday
like,
I'll wish upon
for some context about
me.
that, we should do that movie for our witch season. I already have that listed in the one document as the one. But anyway,
right.
So where is it going with that? Oh, yeah. So terms like polycule and metamor, for a little bit of context, if you're not familiar with that, you might want to explain.
Explain things.
So metamor is basically a term that comes out of polyamorous communities where you are not directly in a romantic or sexual relationship with the person, but they are a partner of your partner, essentially. And so that kind of, there's this kind of love. There can be, it's not required or anything, but often there's this kind of love and communal family friendship bonding between people who are metamors, even if they are not directly in romantic or sexual relationships with each other.
Especially for folks who have like kitchen table polyamory, as the phrase is, which is like you can sit around at a kitchen table together and talk and hang out.
Yeah.
You're
That's the type of polyamory I like, personally.
Yeah.
And then polykule is the word just to describe if you were to like map out the relationships on like a graph, the polykule would be the interconnectedness of all the web. There we go. That's a great word for that. The web of all the different relationships that happen.
And the other word that I used that we didn't really explain in the moment is compersion. And compersion, a lot of times, particularly in monogamous circles, there's a lot of conversation about like jealousy and how to navigate that in polycules, but they don't talk about or recognize compersion, which is being happy for your partner's happiness or joy with a different partner kind of situation. That's like really simplified, but happy for somebody else's happiness, kind of.
Like, just from my own experience, I mean, I'm publicly polyamorous stuff. Like, when I was in a triad before my ex left the triad and burned all the bridges down and stuff like that on his way out. Speaking of horror, but like back when we were a triad, like one of the things that brought me so much joy is I am the most disabled person in that triad. So when we would be walking somewhere, we lived in DC, we would be walking somewhere, I would see my two partners, essentially my husband and my partner, walking together, and I'd be the one trailing behind because I'm a little bit slower, and I would just get so much joy seeing the two of them talking
I
to each
remember the
other.
pictures that you used to
Yeah,
send of you, like, your guys.
yeah, they were my guys, and they'd be like just having a conversation, just very casually walking, and I'd just be so much filled with love in that moment for both of them. And so that's kind of an example of how compersion can look. It can look many different ways, but uh what else for this movie? Oh, queerness. Yeah, we all know Obi-Wan and Anakin are gay for each other. We know that.
Super gay.
Yeah, we know that Padme and um Anakin are together, so that's where the polycule comes in and all that stuff. So lots of queerness in this movie, gayness. And R2-D2 and C-3PO. This is the beginning of their partnership when they actually get to live now under the same roof and work with Bail
As long as
Organa.
C-3PO. I do like that they're very intentional about C-3PO's memory being wiped, but not R2-D2's.
It's because, as we said before,
like
C-3PO is a snitch.
Oh yeah, C-3PO is terrible. His memory needs to be wiped all the time. But I like
Because
that
he would
R2's
full
is
on
not.
be like, oh, did you know Anakin Skywalker? Well, he turned to Darth Vader and he has these two babies. Like, he'd full on tell the whole story.
Yeah, and he
So,
would. And the thing is, half the time he wouldn't even like know that he's not supposed to.
right?
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Also, there's a grief in this is really is handled really interestingly. Um. So the first is with Anakin's mom, and Yoda like talking to Anakin about it, and Yoda's bad advice of rejoice when they join the Force, mourn them, do not miss them, do not, and like maybe do all of those things, right? Particularly in the
Right?
Lutheran Church, we have like when people die, yes, we like say rest in peace and we have funerals and memorial services, but a lot of times we also have a celebration of life. And sometimes those are all the same thing, but there's a sense of like celebrating who the person was for us and how, as Lutherans, we understand God to have worked through them. But that doesn't mean that we're not sad that they died. That doesn't mean that we don't miss the ways that we were in relationship with them. Yeah. So Yoda.
Right. Yoda has such bad advice. As Claudia Gray said, I'll keep pointing this out because everyone should go back and listen to that. Yoda in the prequels has not a single wise thing to say. Hard agree.
Yeah, it's bad.
But yeah, grief is so palpable here, and it's not just like
Palpable.
Palpatine, right? But like just the grief that like some of the senators are like, Padme's grief in the scene when she literally seen democracy die in front of her eyes, and it's been dead for a long time. We've known this, but like kind of like
There's
the
no
final
coming back from
vestiges,
this.
yeah. And just like the grief and brokenness that she has, and that we know Bail Organa and Mon Mothma will learn later has too from some of her interactions. So it's just like a lot of grief happening on here, a lot of deaths and dyings and transitions.
Yeah. And I think there's also so I'm not in 12-step programs. So grain of salt with this, but what I have heard many times from people in 12-step programs is a sense of like detaching with love. And that like there is a sense, because it's not just that Padme is grieving the loss of democracy, but like she also starts to grieve the loss of Anakin, and Obi-Wan has to grieve the loss of Anakin, and his version of it is something like detaching with love, right? He takes Luke into hiding in the most terribly hidden way.
Right.
Because he literally has the same last name.
Yeah. My guess is that
relatives.
if the Emperor or Vader ever found out about Luke Skywalker before they found out it was like his direct son, and be like, oh, that's my nephew because my stepbrother had this child with her because it was an infant and stuff, would be my guess, but still. It doesn't make it that much. It's not hard to figure out.
Yeah, yeah. The timing is suspicious, right? But
Right.
like the way that is one of the ways I think that grief is approached that's like a little bit less terrible in the movies, because they are saying, okay, like I get to grieve and be sad about Anakin, and he made his choices.
Yeah.
He chose this,
Yep.
and I am choosing this. I'm choosing
Yeah.
to stay in this path that I have figured out of not killing helpless people,
Yeah.
and caring for itty bitty babies.
Yeah. And like even the way that we talked about in our A New Hope episode, the YouTube video of Obi-Wan has PTSD, which is a great fan
Mm-hmm.
cut. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. But like the way that Obi-Wan frames his relationship with Anakin to Luke, of course, he's lying to Luke, but at the same time, he's like, Anakin is dead.
Yeah.
Darth Vader now exists, but he killed my friend. And I feel like that's the one of the ways that Anakin has learned, right, that Obi-Wan has learned to live with what has happened and mourn Anakin is my friend is dead. There might be this other
Mm-hmm.
person who shares the same body with him, or parts of the same body, what's left of that body with him, but is not the friend that I have lost and who I am
Yeah.
mourning. So
Yeah. I mean, technically, Obi-Wan tells the truth from a certain point of view.
I can't wait till we get to the Obi-Wan TV series because you have not seen that yet. There's so much there to unpack
I think I'm
about
gonna try
this.
it. I think that's gonna be one of my vacation projects.
So, and I think you'll love it. Leia is adorable in that. She's the main character in that. One of the main characters, along with Obi-Wan. So,
Ooh, nice.
Little child Leia is
Yeah.
so cute. The kind of related to this, as we're talking about grief and stuff, is just this notion of emotion and attachment and the evolving philosophy on that the Jedi have, like what I was talking about, Yoda and Obi-Wan's conversation about that. This
Mm-hmm.
kind of what we get in the movies, that the Jedi Order, the orthodoxy of the Jedi Order is that you're supposed to shun all attachments because you should instead be attached to life itself, not individual people, but
Mm-hmm.
to all life. And that's not very realistic. And it's also this really kind of shitty westernization of Buddhist concepts and stuff like that. That's not actually true to Buddhism. But there's also this kind of connection in Christianity where dualism arose out of this mixture of Christianity and Hellenization, basically colonization of the Mediterranean basin by Greece and then by Rome, and how that kind of mixed with Christianity and created this philosophy called dualism within Christianity, which is basically the idea that everything fleshy and earthy is bad. What is good is the mind. What is good is the soul. And so we need to detach ourselves from worldly pleasures. We need to detach ourselves from, and we even see this a little bit in Paul because we can tell that Paul himself has some Hellenistic understandings. He doesn't go so far as dualism, but he's like saying, don't get married, don't have relationships, devote your life to Jesus. And it's like, that's not a realistic thing. Paul was saying that because he thought the end times were going to happen in like a year or two from now. So it's like, why get connected
Mm-hmm.
into these relationships? But like, it's led into this kind of asceticism in Christianity of like, the only thing we need to do is love God, and everything after that comes second. And that's just this very unhealthy way of viewing things. I've heard it said, like when I was in Sunday school with some of like the bad Sunday school teachers I've had in my life, who would say things like, when I was a kid, they would say things like, you need to put God first, family second, friends third, and then the world fourth, or something like that, is like the framework for how you should rank the priorities of your relationships and your love and your care. And I just want to say that's not very that's not that is a strain of Christianity. That's not what I would consider a good theological strain, and that we have people like Augustine who had some of his own issues. We won't go into that there. But one of the things he says is that when we love other people, we are loving God. It is through our love that connects us to God. So it is our attachments that allows us to be connected to God, our attachments to our family, our attachments to our friends, our attachments to those around us. And so that is just kind of what I always like to come back and point out here. And that's something that the Jedi Order seems to kind of learn by the time of Rey, when she chooses a new path in the sequel trilogies of not shunning her attachments, but holding her family close and uh, kissing Kylo, because why the hell not? It's like you can be a Jedi and also have deep emotional attachments and love for the people you care about, and that's okay. And so I like that we move in that direction in the Star Wars canon eventually, even if it takes however many years in the canon. So my little rant there.
I think it also connects. I want to say it's Confucianism, and I tried to look it up really quickly to check. I'm not 100% sure, but the Confucianism, where it's like start with your self and then your inner circle and then expand from there, and your care in that respect should move outwards towards everybody, and that feels a little bit like that minus the God part.
Mm-hmm.
And that is like, I mean, there's different ways that people do that and experience that and like try to do those things, but yeah.
No. All I'm trying to say in summary though is it's okay to love people deeply. That's not a bad thing. And that doesn't take away from your love for God or love for the world or for social justice. It in fact can and should add to it.
Also, can we talk about prophecy?
Yes, let's do it.
We got into it a little bit when you were talking about, well, you got into it a little bit when you were talking about the novelization, but there's like Anakin's prophecies are problematic.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are like lots of different interpretations of like what a prophecy is, what prophecies are, how prophecies work in general. Kay and I actually did an episode in our first season on diving deep into prophecies for nerds at church that we can link to, because I already put the link in the
Yay.
And there's just this like, and this also connects with the Torchwood episode that I saw last night, where they see something happening in the future and then they think that's how it's going to happen. And then it's like, what are the things that can change and what things can't change? And that's one of the things that happens with like time travel a lot, is this time travel and like any sort of futuristic prophetic type of fantasy sci-fi is what is changeable and what is not. And so Anakin thinks that everything he sees, I don't know, he simultaneously thinks that everything he sees is going to happen and that he can change it.
Mm-hmm.
And so he says like to Padme, you die in childbirth. That's his dream. And then he's like, I won't let this one become real. And then in trying to prevent it, he actually brings it to fruition.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's the moment where Padme's like, all I want is your love. And Anakin is like, but I have all the power, more power than a Jedi could want, because Jedis are not supposed to want power. And Padme's just like, that's not what I want. Yeah. I want your love. And
right.
And he doesn't give it, and then she dies. And like, it's just Anakin is just the worst.
Right.
But there is this like, how do we navigate that in sci-fi fantasy, but like how do we think about that also like in biblical terms of like, and faith terms of like, what is a prophecy? What are prophets? Are the ones who call and point towards like real terrible things happening right now. We call those people prophets, but where is like what? I don't know. There's just so much.
And I know you get into that episode, but just a little foretaste of like biblical prophecy is not actually about predicting the future, really. And that's a big misconception that pop culture has about biblical prophecy. And one of the thing that you're saying about trying to prevent the future from happening and then making it happen in fiction is and in science is called a causal loop, when basically you cause the thing that you're trying to prevent, but you would not have been able to cause it had you not been trying to prevent it. So that's like a causal loop thing, and it's a fun thing that happens in a lot of time travel stuff. And one thing I really like it happening in is Steven Universe. Oh my god, we need to do like an extended BooTube miniseries on Steven Universe one day. We've had 2 episodes on Steven Universe, but we need more. And I know Emily hasn't seen Steven Universe.
Yeah.
So
I've seen like other people have watched it when I've been around, but I haven't really watched
it is one like it has not the show at this point, the final season aired in 2019 to so like it's like 5 years old now, so like media has come so far just in the 5 years since then, but at the time it's airing it was like the only kids show that had openly queer characters talking about openly queer things, and so I just love the show for so many reasons. But anyway, Garnet is one of the characters in that show, and she can predict the future, and she tells Steven like he wants to know what his future entails, and so she says, I don't want to tell you because if I tell you, then it'll mess things up. But he keeps asking, so she eventually tells him that he's going to end up she has this vision of him on the roof crying in a thunderstorm. And so the whole episode is him trying to prevent that from happening, and then he ends up and then when things keep happening that lead to that happening, he eventually just says, I give up. And he goes up on the roof and he says, I'm ready for you, whatever is going to happen to me. And Garnet enters in at that point. She's like, this is what I was trying to prevent, is you coming to this space. And it's just a really beautiful, my description of it is so bad, but the episode itself is this really beautiful kind of discussion about these very things, about like the future, knowing the future, trying to prevent the future and stuff like that, and fate and destiny and all those things. So
yeah, I think that works really well with the Torchwood episode, the Ghost episode, with like and that there's like a we don't know the context of it, right? You get this when it's these kinds of prophecies, you get this clip, and so we get this clip of crap, I forgot her name, the main character
of Torchwood, Gwen.
We get this one clip of Gwen and we see this, but we don't know any of the context, and the context is very different from what she had anticipated it would be. And so she does die, but like there's also like the 11th Doctor, which you will soon be getting to, right? When the way that Amy and Rory Pond leave is because of angels and because of the like seeing their gravestones, and so they know that they like went back, and so it's just, there's just like so many different ways that we fulfill the prophecy, self-fulfilling prophecies, right? And that plays into Anakin's descent into Darth Vader, of like Anakin is appointed by Palpatine specifically so that Palpatine can manipulate him, and get him like to sow the seeds of discontent. And then Obi-Wan is like, Anakin, this whole buddy with Palpatine thing, Council's not a fan of. And Anakin then keeps relying on Palpatine, and then is surprised when the Council is like, we don't trust you. The Palpatine made us put you on the Council. We didn't choose to put you on the Council. Therefore, like, why are you mad at us that we're not automatically making you a master? And I was just listening last week to NPR, and there's an episode on Fresh Air, that so we can link to the episode of Fresh Air, but Peter Pomerantsev was interviewed was interviewed about a book he wrote called How to Win an Information War.
Mm.
And it talks about propaganda in World War, particularly between the UK and Russia. And like the part of it is facts don't actually matter.
Mm-hmm.
But there are other ways to engage in propaganda. And it feels like Palpatine is waging a very specific propaganda campaign against the Jedi, but like very specific for Anakin. Like it is
Yeah.
tailored to manipulate Anakin and his beliefs and his thoughts and all of that stuff. Um, and and so like it's just interesting because it's really hard to combat propaganda because facts don't matter and fact checking doesn't matter. And so then like Padme's like pointing out stuff, and Anakin just like ignores the truth about the
Yeah.
Chancellor when talking to Padme. And
Yeah. It feels very much like Anakin is a QAnon kind of person who bought into to every, and at that point, like no amount of facts is going to interrupt. But that kind of gets like Palpatine also has this very like we don't see it much in the film happening, but we know it happens because how else does the entire Galactic Senate keep giving him power? How else does the Senate I mean, how else? Like, and we see it like in the TV shows, Rebels and stuff like that. The Empire Day and stuff like this. All this propaganda the Empire produces, and so like there is this very strong propaganda war that Palpatine is waging to the galaxy that is allowing him to keep gaining more and more power and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that kind of gets to like we've been talking all along about the context of each of the sets of trilogies. The original trilogy in the Cold War context, this one in the war with Iraq and Afghanistan context, with President George W. Bush being in power, and George Lucas very specifically talking about how Congress just keeps gave the president all these emergency powers for this war that had no evidence to expand the war from Afghanistan into Iraq and stuff like that. Through propaganda and through this tragedy of 9/11 and stuff like that was able to be utilized into the propaganda machine and stuff. So like that, those are some very intentional stuff. And we see this happening again today with the rise of Christian nationalism. It was an issue in George Bush's time, but it just continues to be an issue, continues to gain and garner more and more power in this country.
And the propaganda around like the genocide that Netanyahu is perpetrating against Palestinians. Like they're literally trying to ban TikTok.
Yeah.
Not data mining because they data mine. Just TikTok for data mining.
Yep.
Yeah.
So these real world kind of connections here, and that quote you already mentioned about Padme. So this is how liberty dies with thunderous applause. Just that quote, like when I watch this with my friend Britt Chill, shout out Britt Chill if you're listening. Like that was always her favorite quote from the movie, and she always like, this is exactly about the situation right now when we were in college together and stuff. And I'm like, yeah, it is.
Yeah, and it is right now, right?
Yeah,
like
again, it is right now.
Thunderous applause for inciting violence from a president who already is on trial multiple ways for inciting violence. Yeah, and there's just this. Yeah, I really do love Natalie Portman. I think she is the star in terms of acting. Not just because of like the fear that you get, the sense of fear that you get from her about Anakin, the growing fear, but also the like just the despair and the like. I have been at that point multiple times in my not so long life of how this is what is happening.
Yeah.
And people are just okay with it, or people are celebrating it. And it's just so, there's just such a cognitive dissonance and such a like, it just doesn't make sense at all. And then she also has the, when Obi-Wan is like, this is what Anakin did. She's like, I don't believe you. As tears stream down her face, and we know that she does.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the difference between her and Anakin. Anakin won't believe anything he doesn't want to believe. Padme might say she doesn't believe, but also puts the pieces together.
Yeah. Yeah. One more thing about the book, because I keep bringing up, but in the movies, it is hard to see why. I will just say this: it is near impossible to see how Anakin and Padme. Well, we can see how Anakin fell for Padme, but how can this smart, brilliant person fall for somebody who is 10 years younger than her and just like keep like when Anakin is just this petulant kid throughout the entire second and third movie. But the book helps like show Anakin has this really caring side, and we see that in Clone Wars too, like with Ahsoka and stuff like that, and we just don't see that enough in the movie. So we get to see that more in the book too, that he can be a nice person when he wants to be, just not usually. The last thing I have for this is just that to talk about this film as a tragedy, and to say tragedy, I'm using specifically the literary term to describe a genre of literature, film, and all that stuff, which talks about where a tragedy has several characteristics. And so the tragedy has a hero of the story. The hero has a tragic flaw. They have this moment of self-realization called the epiphanic moment, and then they have their death or downfall. And I feel like this movie is very clearly like the tragedy of Anakin. We get that arc. He's the hero. He has all these special powers and stuff. His fatal flaw is his pride and his anger, and we can just keep going on. He has so many fatal flaws. He has that moment of self-realization when he realizes he killed Padme, and then like we don't actually see him die until however many movies later, but like that's an epiphanic moment, and then he has nothing left to live for except just be the Emperor's little latchkey sycophant lackey. That's what I was looking for. Lackey sycophant. But also I feel like there's this kind of tragedy of Obi-Wan here too, where like Obi-Wan's flaw is just his deep love for Anakin, and then when that is betrayed, he doesn't realize it until it's too late, and then when it's happened, it's like the empire of the galaxy has already fallen and he has to go into exile.
So then what's
Padme's fatal flaw?
Polycule tragedy.
Yeah, Padme's flaw is loving Anakin, liking that white boy dick.
Anakin, or is it her fealty to her job as senator?
Oh, I think that's it. Yeah, you're onto something there.
Especially because she is the one who pressures Anakin to stay in the Jedi Order.
Yes, exactly. And he keeps saying, let's run away together. And she's like, no, I have a duty to the Republic. You have a duty to the Jedi. Yep. Yeah. Good call there. Agreed.
Thanks.
Anything else for a deep dive?
No, I think that's, 2 hours and 10 minutes. We had a break in there, but
yeah,
we're like far enough in that it's probably okay if we.
I was looking up just to see if this would hit, with the break. I mean, and editing will go down, but I just wanted to see, will this be one of our longest episodes? And it probably won't be unless we extend it for at least another 30 minutes. So I'm not going to do that.
I don't think I have that much for the Force Lord.
Right. But our longest episode, for those of you listening who want to know, is our super length episode on The Exorcist with TJ Chancellor. That one went for over 3 hours. It's still our longest episode. So
yeah.
Anyway, Force lore. I wish we could like talk about clone lore and stuff here too. Right, we can. There's no rules. We make up the rules because like the whole Order 66 thing is just wild to me.
Yeah.
But we see the ramifications of that in shows like Bad Batch and Clone Wars and stuff. So we'll have to do another BooTube and get into that some more, I think.
And Ahsoka.
Yeah, and Ahsoka. But I will say, though, Force lore specifically, we learn Sith lore for the first time about Darth Plagueis the Wise and how a dark power of the Force, a dark side power of the Force, is the ability to use Force to manipulate midichlorians directly, which can have the effect to bring people back from death, keep people alive forever. And in the cutout scene of the movie, create a pregnancy when there is none. So
yeah,
all these fun dark side
Wait,
powers.
so is Anakin trans?
Ooh, yeah,
It's kind of it's giving Mary and the Holy Spirit
yeah.
vibes.
Yeah,
She's not given any Y chromosomes.
right. Double Y chromosome planet. Double X.
Oh my
Listen
gosh.
to our Alien 3 episode for that one.
Yeah. Oof. Yeah. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I also like the acknowledgement that prophecy can be misinterpreted.
Mm-hmm.
In Yoda names that, and then and just like not contextualized. I mean, contextualizing it can also do a lot for reinterpretation. And then also that when the Force is so active, Force death is real, which is the Padme dying of a broken heart.
Mm-hmm.
That she just is.
Padme dying of misogyny.
Known to us of misogyny.
Mm-hmm.
Just can't bear to live without Anakin.
I guess we'll rate this movie. Do you want me to go first? Or do you want to go first for one rare time?
I have a split rating again.
Okay. Well, I'll go first then and see if that my rating will help with your split rating.
Okay.
So the movie as it stands probably be a 6 out of 10 Kyber crystal, maybe 7. But the thing is, the book, the novelization, our conversation about this movie, and also how this particular entry fits into the entire Star Wars franchise, and especially the Skywalker's trilogy, I will probably rate this more like an 8 out of 10 Kyber crystals. I really like the movie. I really liked our conversation. I love the book. It's still such a good book, and that helps make the movie better in my mind. So that's where I'd rate that. As for favorite kill, I would say Anakin. He dies and Darth Vader takes over. We've been waiting for Anakin to die this whole time because, come on, he's so obnoxious. But yeah, so that would be it for me. What about you?
So I have not read the book, so I don't have that bonus.
Mm-hmm.
Our conversation was great, which is partly why I'm gonna give Padme an 8 because she still falls for Anakin, but just like Natalie Portman. I mean, really, I'm giving Natalie Portman an 8. but she has the like. It's Natalie Portman gets an 8, and she's deducted because of Padme falling in love with Anakin. That's the yeah. And then the movie as a whole is gonna get a 4, and most of that is for Obi-Wan.
Do you have a favorite kill?
I was going to say Anakin, because I do think I think that's my I'll keep Anakin.
Yeah, that's fine.
He's my favorite kill because
my least
needs to die.
My least favorite kill, I will say, is all the split kind of cuts of all the Jedi dying throughout the universe, and then it keep cutting back to Yoda, whose like heart is breaking and he is collapsing. Oh, it's such a depressing, heartbreaking scene.
Oh. Yeah, that was that one gets me. Yeah. The slaughter of the innocents.
Oh, in the temple too.
Those child soldiers.
Especially when the one kid is like, Anakin, what are we going to do? Or Master Anakin, what are we going to do? And he just glares and turns on his lightsaber, and he like just knows it's coming. He's like, oh. Yeah. Did you have any jump scares for this one?
I did not.
Yay.
Woot woot.
Unsurprised. even though I would say this is a fairly horrific movie and horror movie, that's not really a jump
It's
scary
not a jump scare movie.
Um,
I probably will on Aliens, whatever, that we just watched the trailer of.
yeah, Alien Romulus.
Yeah.
Okay, well, our next movie then, which we'll cover next week, is the first Alien versus Predator movie. So Emily can finally see the intersection of these franchises, for better or worse.
Dun dun dun. And then after that, we will be watching Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens,
Woo!
Which is phenomenal. It's
Yeah.
one of my favorites.
Really?
As I recall.
I
know 7 and 8 are way better than 9.
Yes. 8, I will. No, we should save it. But just spoilers. 8, I can't not say it. 8 is probably my favorite Star Wars movie of all the Star Wars movies. And 9 is probably one of my least favorite Star Wars movies of all the Star Wars movies.
Oh yeah.
So you can see how much of a shift that was.
They set us up so well in 8 and then just got wrecked in editing.
Whereas 7 feels like basically the exact same plot of A New Hope, just more diverse. So it's better than A New Hope because it's more diverse, but it's the exact same plot. So
okay,
that's it for me.
See that.
Anyway. Yeah, so tune in next week for Alien v Predator, 2 weeks for Force Awakens.
Indeed. That's it for our show. Our theme music was by Matt May. Horror Nerds at Church releases seasonally on Thursdays. Please comment, rate, and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you catch your podcasts. Support us on Patreon and get access to exclusive movie commentary episodes, BooTube episodes, and more bonus content by going to patreon.com/horrornerdsatchurch. Starting at only $5 to sign up, it is way cheaper than OBGYN care in the Empire. Follow us. I mean, or maybe it's not, and that's the problem.
Right.
Follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Horror Nerds at Church, and Blue Sky and Twitter at HNACPOD for all the latest updates about upcoming films, news, and other announcements. Until next time, hold your applause and let's try to save liberty.
There you go. Like it.